Okay, so that's the take coming in on the entire auto space from both Vaishali and Kunal. We also have Chakri Lokpriya, the Chief Investment Officer of Equities at LGT Wealth, joining us on the show. And Chakri, hi, morning. Thanks so much for your time today. I want to get your sense on some of these capital goods stocks like ABB India, you have Siemens, or for instance, something like a CG Power or LG Equipment. My colleague was just highlighting about the impact that these stocks could see from the DGTR proposal on China for their electric steel. What do you have to make of this development, and to what extent could this bring some cheer back to some of these names?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I think there are two or three things. One is when the GST was cut, there was the expectation that, the amount that is going to be spent on by the fiscal on capital goods would come down. But thankfully, there has been indications from the government that they will not cut that, and capex will be maintained. In fact, capex will increase from that 11.4 lakh crores to some other number higher than that. So against that backdrop, now I think the valuations are looking okay because the growth expectations have now come back to the sector, whether it's ABB or Siemens or some of the companies like Kalpataru or NCC. And moreover, therefore the demand for all the various allied services would also go up.
All right, so that's the take coming in on the cap goods space. But Chakri, along with that, just wanted to have your take on the metal pack as well, because what we understand, and even Namira is highlighting the fact that the China production cuts are getting more aggressive. That's been one of the stories that off late has been playing out for the Indian metal counters, and add to that is the steel safeguard duty as well. So it's a kind of a double bonanza coming in for the steel sector back home in India. But what is your sense, given the fact that the sector overall has underperformed so much? There were so many headwinds coming in on the sector. But do you see these factors really making something into the numbers as well? Are you bullish on the metal sector overall?
You're absolutely right on many counts. There are a few things going in India's favor and in terms of the metal sector. And one, for instance, where China is cutting production, Indian demand is increasing. Third, companies like Tata Steel are expanding their capacities at a time when demand from India is strong. And three, the safeguards that the Indian government has announced will help in producing some amount of pricing protection. So against this whole backdrop, the whole companies like Tata Steel or name it any other metal company, they're trading at very reasonable valuation of 6 to 7 times. So, and they've underperformed. And so I think, therefore, the upside, because, the demand outlook looks good, I think is worth buying into.
Okay, so that's a call coming in on some of these steel stocks. But Chakri, talk to us about the entire pharma space as well. This morning we're getting news that you have a pharma major that's come out with their breast cancer drug in India, and that's Alchem, if I'm not wrong. But what is your take on the entire pharma space? Because over the course of last week, the weekend, and this week itself, we've seen a lot of US FDA approvals coming in for the major drugs that some of these companies are looking to launch. So what's your take on that?
Here there's a tale of two stories. One is domestic and one is international. On the domestic front, companies like Mankind, etc., are well positioned because the demand remains intact. There's no major negative surprises out there. On the international front, all tariff talks aside, it's fairly clear that Trump will not increase, would not be in a position to increase tariffs on the Indian pharmaceutical generic sector. At the same time, in terms of product announcements by the companies is in a good stead, and the valuations are all right. I mean, they've moved up a little bit, but this is a sector that we would continue to be constructive on.
All right, that's the take coming in on the pharma space. But with this, Vaishali, just wanted to understand any of your stock ideas for today, which is making to your list and looking attractive right now.
Definitely, there are quite a few in fact. So one of them is Muthoot, which we saw yesterday, that it is already in a very strong uptrend, and as a disclaimer, we have also recommended to our clients. So this is a good new round of momentum setting in. So I'm looking at this stock with a target of 3130 as a trading strategy with stop loss of 2980. And the other stock in the cash category that I like is Hind Copper. That too saw very good volume and new round of momentum setting in. So I think in all likelihood this can do 320 and 285 would be the stop loss.
Okay, so that's Hind Copper that's made its way to Vaishali's radar this morning. But on that note, we'll slip into a very short break and talk more about the trade setup expected today just on the other side.
You did see profit taking across the board pretty much, while of course IT was one sector which was under pressure from the word go. But look at Bharti, ICICI Bank, M&M, Maruti, Eicher, even some of the auto plays actually saw some profit taking set in towards the latter part of trade. L&T has really been a non-starter. That's been the case with Reliance as well, barring a few dashes or attempts that both these stocks made, I think, in the last week or so. But Chakri, what's the case in point for some of these large cap heavyweights which have just been, non-participants in this lap off the market? L&T, Reliance, classic examples.
You're absolutely right, Aisha. A couple of things. One is, in case of Reliance Industries, a couple of things have happened. Globally, oil prices have come down. There has been a huge amount of volatility, and in managing that refining margins has been a challenging fact because, on the other hand, the rupee volatility has also increased. All these various factors together, kind of impacts the GRM. And second is, this new energy business is a very, very significant value kicker. That's clearly down the pike, and that's where the whole growth is going to come from. Now, with the GST cuts, Reliance, the retail in the segment of the business will clearly benefit. And again, you'll see an uptick in volumes. So the sum of the parts story still is very attractive. L&T, on the other hand, fears of capex slowdown has pulled down the stock. But again, now with the revival of intent from the government, I think you will see L&T beginning to perk up.
Okay, so that's the take coming in on some of the large caps. And Vaishali, give us your sense on how some of these large caps are placed on the charts, because like we were talking about Reliance, it's not given a significant move in so long now. HDFC Bank also just starting to move a little bit. Help us understand where on the charts do you see these stocks placed right now, and any momentum on either side if you're seeing right now?
Well, actually talking about Reliance, talking about HDFC Bank, all these frontline stocks, they are taken a breather. In fact, it's Axis which is showing signs of revival. So I would say stock-specific movement does exist. So I would focus more on Axis Bank right now, because since a couple of days, this is trying to get into a trend. And Reliance has just been in a very range-bound move, but still the support levels are not broken. So I would say when the bias is still positive, keeping in mind 1380, as long as this support, which is very crucial, is held on. So I would maintain a range of 1380 to 1420 for now. But not much to say. It's the auto sector. It is sometimes the steel sector which is showing some strength, and that's about it.
Okay. Vaishali, great to have you on the show. Thanks as always for your time. Let me also welcome on board Aditya Agarwal. Aditya, hi, good morning. What stock-specific or sector-related trends are you picking up?
Morning, Aisha. Thanks for the show. So it's more of consumption-related that I see continues to be in focus, and then you see higher highs, higher lows in some of these spaces. So Blue Star is something which I like, can be looked at for a fresh trade here. Yesterday we saw a good closing in Blue Star. So at current levels, I'll be a buyer in Blue Star for a target of 2150 on the upside. Place a stop loss at 1920 on the downside. The second stock is Naukri.com. We've seen that after a consolidation stock finally has shown a breakout in trade yesterday, backed by healthy volumes as well. So my sense is Naukri can see higher levels from here on as well. So for a target of 1530, I'll be a buyer here with a stop loss at 1350 on the downside.
All right, so those are the buy calls coming in from Aditya. So white good cap companies, they are definitely making to the list of our experts. Let's watch out for that. But along with that, one such stock that is going to be in focus is actually Zydus Life Sciences, because today Antique has come out with a note where they have gone ahead and upgraded the rating on this particular counter from a hold to a buy now, and the target price has also been raised to 1255 rupees. That's almost a 20% upside from the current market price. What they are saying is that growth is to be driven by innovation, biosimilars, as well as the specialty portfolio. Their entry into global VMS is boosting the consumer wellness revenue, and along with that, they are really looking forward to an improved visibility and accretive acquisitions is what the company has done of late. So Zydus Life Sciences will be in focus today. But Kunal, what are the charts telling you for this particular counter? Because I see that this particular counter, do you believe, is ready for a breakout?
Yeah, it's already shown signs of good recovery. In fact, I was looking at the quarterly charts for Zydus Life from 1300 in 2024. The stock fell down to sub 800 levels. It bottomed out at those 800 mark, I think, few quarters back, month of March, April 2025, and from there on we started to see a good recovery for Zydus Life. It's come back to that 1000 plus levels. So from the relative highs of 1300, the stock is still almost 30% or 25% lower in that sense. But then I think looking at the last 2 quarters of recovery, there is expectation that the stock would probably try and at least come back towards maybe a further highs around the 1100, 1150 odd kind of a range. So I believe that the more these stocks, they generally take time for these stocks to get into a recovery after such a kind of a steep 40-50% correction. That generally is an indication that we are looking at a fresh trend building up, and it could be more slow and gradual for the stock price. So bullish on Zydus from a medium to longer term perspective, and I'm expecting 1100 to 1150 as a near term target range.
Right, okay, that's the take coming in on Zydus Life. Chakri, are you buying anything afresh in this market right now?
A couple of things. One is, of course, we've all spoken about autos. So the auto ancillaries, whether it's the tire companies like, you name it, JK Tire, C8, all these companies clearly benefit from one, auto volumes going up, and second, the raw material cost, which is crude linked, are also coming down. So that's an area they're looking at. And second is, banking, PSU banks with the further rate cuts, and NBFCs also will benefit, whether it's a Canara Bank or State Bank. And, the new businesses, which is, if your AI is going to become the new big thing, companies like Anant Raj, which are spending a lot on data centers.
Oh yeah, that could be one, stock which could be interesting, Anant Raj, given that now perhaps IT companies may be looking at more onshoring rather than offshore hires. But Aditya, what is your own sense on the charts of Anant Raj?
I say it's a clean breakout and breakout backed by healthy volumes. Rather, I would call it very strong volumes. So definitely there's buying here, and persistent buying is there in the stock. Can easily test levels of 790, 795 on the upside. So I would be a buyer in the stock for sure. If you already have it, trail your stop losses, maybe close to about 650 should be a stop loss. And if you want a fresh entry, definitely you can enter the stock even at current levels. And you could see levels of 795, 800 from medium term in the stock.
Okay, so that's a take on Anant Raj. And Kunal, we were just discussing Anant Raj yesterday and how this entire data center GCC opportunity could play up for the stock. But another significant name in this entire data center space is LTIMindtree. Give us a sense of how that stock is shaping up on the charts, and are you seeing any positivity there?
Not really over there, because that stock has clearly been an underperformer. L&T Infotech Mindtree, I think, made a high in 2023, 7,500 levels. From there on, the last 2 years, the stock has just been to a major struggle. Even on the short-term charts, there is lack of momentum for L&T Infotech Mindtree. The stock is still trading at 5,000, 5,500 band over the very near term. The concern for many of the stocks in these times is that volume push generally gets missing. And when you don't see a major volume push even after a spate of positive news flows, which happens into the stock prices, that generally tells you that there is no interest of buyers into these stocks, and that's why these stocks may continue to just about trade into their own bands of consolidation. So I'm expecting the same for L&T Infotech Mindtree.
Right, let's watch out for some of these counters. But along with that, the other pocket that is going to be in focus today is actually the companies which cater to import of the cranes, because DGTR has actually recommended imposing an anti-dumping duty on imports of the cranes from China for the next 5 years. And some of these domestic companies like Sangvi Movers, Ace Constructions, they are going to be in focus today. But Chakri, just wanted to get your sense on this one, given the fact that the infrastructure pickup is seen to be happening. What sort of a growth will you pencil in for such companies? Because I do remember clearly that post-COVID, when this whole economy was seeing a bit of a revamp and coming back on tracks, these companies were actually being one of the multi-baggers. But this DGTR announcement, along with that, the push on the macro side, what's your sense on these?
No, you're absolutely right. If you step back and look, whether it's you're building a dam or a house or an office, all of them requires cranes, JCBs and all, and most of that equipment is imported by Action Construction, ACE, Bharat Earth Movers. And these companies have also forayed into manufacturing their own equipment as well. Now, all they needed was a push, and that push has come now from the government. And now if that materializes from the same PLI which benefited a number of sectors in the past, can do again wonders for an ACE or BEML and companies in that space. But I think the import component is so big that these companies will benefit big time in the growth that is to come in the coming years.
Okay, bunch of stocks which are also going to be in focus then this morning, and we've talked about autos as to how both Maruti and Hyundai have talked about how much delivery they actually saw on day one of Navratri, which kick-started yesterday. 25,000 cars delivered from Maruti's, and they state in their own words that it's a response that like they've never seen before. And for Hyundai as well, they've recorded about 11,000 billings, the highest single-day bookings in about 5 years. Also because many were waiting for those GST rollouts to happen, so they were holding back on new purchases in any case. Other than that, of course, there's the gold financiers as well. Remember, gold continues to extend its gains. International prices have now hit a record of $37.50 to an ounce. So Manappuram Muthoot, they continue to be in focus also. And of course, defense names. The defense secretary has now pointed to big capex push and about 30,000 crores worth of drone purchases. So that particular segment within defense as well is looking quite interesting. Chakri, the listed pool within the sort of drone manufacturers or the entire supply chain seems to be very limited right now. But anything that you're spotting?
You know, I think within drone in particular, I mean, there's no particular drone manufacturer, whether it's a Bharat Electronics, all these companies are getting into that space. And now, you know, that has become the new big area, not just drones, but, you know, high-tech warfare, defense spend, whether it's Europe, 5% of GDP, India wants to spend 2 to 3% of its GDP. And what it has done, the time to market has reduced dramatically because of technology. And that's where India is actually in a good space because of its talent pool available. So, you know, all the defense companies, because whether it's a Bharat Electronics or a Hindustan Aeronautics, these are the end buyers. And a number of startups service into them, or supply into them. So I think if you just look at the big ones, you will benefit from the drone manufacturing.
Although there is Dronacharya as well as, you know, Idea Forge, which are specifically into drones. But those are relatively newer listed entities. But are there anything within the defense pack that you're liking for a near-term trade?
There are a couple of stocks, Aisha, which do stand out. The first one is HAL. We've seen a good up move in the stock, and now it's entering into a narrow consolidation phase. I think it's a good time to again latch onto this stock. On the downside, 47.50 is a good support area, shouldn't break that easily. On the upside, stock can test levels of 5,200. So HAL is something which definitely tops the chart. Then second, BEL is also something which is looking quite interesting. Here too, we're seeing a similar kind of a chart setup after a breakout, a narrow consolidation. Yesterday, we saw minor profit taking as well. So my sense is you can also look at a BEL with a stop loss just around 390, 95 odd levels. And stock has the potential to cross its previous peak, which was somewhere around 430, and test levels of 450 as well. Apart from that, there's a small company, Astra Microsystems, that is also looking quite interesting, Aisha. So that can also test levels of about 1,300 on the upside. On the downside, good support lies between 1,050, 1,070.
Okay, so that's the take on the defense space. But, you know, while we're talking about defense, Kunal, yesterday we had news flow on 2 shipping counters. Shipping Corporation of India on the back of multiple MOUs that they've signed. And also you had Garden Reach that has bagged a big order from Germany. So what is your take when it comes to some of these shipbuilders within the defense pack? Because, you know, they've been absolutely silent. But in the last 1 week or so, we've seen some moves coming in back over here.
So yeah, I think price activity is suggesting that we are heading towards a breakout for many of these names. Shipping Corporation of India, MMTC, then you've looked at, you know, GRSC. There are many names over here where after weeks and months of actually price correction, these stocks have started to show signs of breakout. Volumes are making a comeback. So even if you look at a cluster of volumes over the last 1 week, 1 month or so for these stocks, there is a remarkable change for the volume patterns for these names with respect to the historical volumes preceding the move where these stocks went into a corrective phase. That itself tells you that there's a buying interest which has come back into these names. Now, when prices go into a breakout, when news flow starts to become positive, that's a more like a perfect ingredient towards stock prices coming out of a major corrective phases and restarting their long-term uptrends or medium-term uptrends, as the case could be. So I think in this case, I would probably believe that many of the stocks, Garden Reach, Shipping Corporation of India, MTC, etc., I think these stocks continue to look very attractive, and I think dips should be taken as good buying or accumulative opportunity.
All right, so that's the take coming in on select counters with respect to shipping. But along with that, Kunal, there's been no stopping for Bajaj Finance and Bajaj Finserv. Anything in particular you're spotting over there?
So in fact, I actually believe that these stocks would go into a pause over here, because after this recent run up, we are at a point where large cap stocks are not showing signs of momentum. And generally, when you don't see too many large cap stocks firing up, you expect that the ones which have been doing reasonably well, from the sector, they would go into a phase of a pause if the run up is a bit, steep for these names. Bajaj Finance has done remarkably well in the last 1 month. I think the stock has moved from 870-75 levels to 1040-50 plus mark, which was the recent high for Bajaj Finance. So I think in that context, it's a decent 15% plus kind of a price move for the stock price. And after such a kind of a steep rally, you generally expect that the stock goes into at least a few weeks of consolidation. And I think in that process, in case if it comes down to say 50% of the rally, which is closer to 975 odd mark, that could be a good trigger point or a risk reward point to initiate a fresh buy. So not expecting any major trend on an immediate basis. But I think if these stocks go into a further correction of 3-5%, that should be a good opportunity for traders who missed out in the earlier leg.
Well, talking about good opportunities, what a surprise from NSE. The Diwali Muhurat session this time is in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Finally, we all get our evening
sleep.
Yeah. I almost didn't believe it, actually. I was like 1:45 to 2:45 p.m. I'm reading that right. But yeah.
I hope this becomes a phenomena.
I'm sure it will. I'm certain it will. They can't do this once and then take it away from us. But anyways, yes, Diwali afternoon is when we're going to have the Muhurat session. But Aditya, other than that, any other trends that you're spotting within IT? Do you think IT stocks are going to continue to see some more down days, and should they be shorted further?
I won't really short Aisha IT companies, especially the large cap IT names, because if you clearly take a look at their trend, they have been in a downtrend. And yesterday's move also, if you notice, a lot of these large cap IT names did see a bit of a recovery from the lows. So my sense is they could enter into a consolidation, maybe a time-wise correction at max. And from there on, it should build on from that consolidation phase that we're looking at. And I would actually be a buyer in some of the names, large cap IT names, a name like an Infosys, a TCS, and HCL. All three stocks, my sense is, can see consolidation, a run-up post a consolidation. So Infosys for me is a buy at current levels. You can easily look at a target of, on the upside, close to about 1650, 1700. A TCS as well looks quite interesting to me, even at current levels. The risk reward is extremely in favor, with a support on the downside just below 3000. On the upside, stock can surprise you with a target of 3500, 3600 as well. And same holds true for HCL Tech as well. That stock can also test levels of 1600, 1700. So I'm talking of medium to longer term time frame. I'm not looking at shorting IT, especially large cap IT names. Rather, I would look to buy in a staggered manner in this consolidation and minor correction that we're witnessing.
Okay, so that's a take on IT. But Chakri, once again, want to come to you. And while we were talking about NBFCs, want to get your sense on the entire sector, because if I pull up the year-to-date charts of some of these companies, you have names like Manappuram, L&T Finance, Muthoot. They're some of the top Nifty 500 gainers on a year-to-date basis. In fact, something like an L&T Finance is up more than 80% just a YTD. What's your take on NBFCs, and how do they compare with large private sector or PSU banks right now, given the kind of performance all of them have had in the first quarter?
No, NBFCs are in a good space. Of course, within that, there are a number of categories. Now, whether we just spoke about Bajaj Finance, it run up, but that will benefit from higher, because of the GST cuts, higher auto volumes. Then all the Muthuts, they're clearly benefiting, will continue to benefit from the very high gold prices, and therefore the loan to values look good. Their kind of collateral is very strong. Third, if you look at companies like, Shriram Transport Finance, they're also in a good space because, the volumes will pick up as the economy picks up. And the underlying to the whole thing is as interest rates come down, and now the expectation is they'll come down even further, their margins will impact and the volumes will increase. And therefore, I think we'll continue to be buyers of NBFCs.
Okay, let's get into mid-cap strategies as well going while we wait for those pre-open rates to settle down. Kunal, what's on your list?
So I'll go with the buy on Oil India. That's a stock which I think after a correction of 10-15% has come back into a breakout. 400 is where the stock has crossed those levels. 424 is where I would place the targets for Oil India over the very short term, and stop loss for this trade could be kept at that breakout point of 400 mark.
Right. Aditya, what about your stock strategies?
Hoodco is something which is looking quite interesting to me. Aisha, yesterday we've seen a good up move in the stock. My sense is, and backed by volumes, so my sense is this is likely to continue. So I'll go with a Hoodco for a target of 265 on the upside, place a stop loss somewhere around 235 on the downside.
All right, those are the calls coming in from both of our experts. Let's watch out for that. But off late, Chakri, the life insurance counters are also doing very well. Some of these brokerages are also flagging it off, and they are also liking it with respect to the valuations. And after that GST reset, they do believe that the penetration is expected to increase substantially going ahead after taking that a bit of an ITC hit in the near term. But what's your sense on the life insurance counters, Chakri? Anything in particular that is looking good to you?
You're absolutely right in terms of the GST cut. Clearly it's a very big volume driver. Volumes were never the issue for this industry. It was always pricing. Now, will pricing improve because of GST cut? The answer is no. Competition continues to remain very strong. So I think this is a sector, we haven't had much luck, so I'll stay away from it.
Right. Okay, stay away from it. Chakri, great to have you on the show. Thanks as always for your time. Let's just see what the pre-open rates have settled in at, and it seems like once again it's going to be one of those quiet days up until perhaps we see some traction perhaps. But here's what else is making news. And days after the Trump administration hiked the H-1B visa fee, the biggest tech giants are saying that immigration remains vital to America's future, and